Hello, everybody. I'm Marian Waldman with Teach My Kid to Read. And today I'm very excited to introduce Dawn LaBrosse, the Youth Services Coordinator, and Kate Buechler, the Youth Services Librarian from the Wildwood Library in Washington County. And they are located in Mahtomedi, Minnesota. I think I got it.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad to introduce the both of you and just share the amazing work that you've done to create your collection of decodable books and spread the word. But before we begin, I'm wondering if either of you would tell us a little bit about your community and how your library fits in with it.
Of course. So Mahtomedi, Minnesota, the Wildwood Library is part of the Washington County Library System. And so we have a central library in Woodbury, which Dawn works out of. And then we have 6 branches and then 2 associate libraries and a law library. So we have, a consortium that we get to work with. And then just for like geographic context, Washington County is a metro area of the Twin Cities. So we are east of St. Paul, the capital of Minnesota, and we are on the western border of Wisconsin. So we're kind of sandwiched right in there. And Mahtomedi has a population of about 7,000, but there are a lot of little small towns right around us that also use the library. They all end in wood, birchwood, dellwood, a bunch of small little places that come to us as their library. And then as far as the building goes, it's a beautiful new building. It was opened in the summer of 2020. So we have really only been functional in this new building during COVID. So we're still adjusting. Our community is still adjusting. We have new people in every day saying, I haven't been in the library yet. So it's been really fun to give little tours every day, basically. And so getting people in. And then as far as where we're located in the community, we're very close to all the public schools. And so the Mahtomedi public school system has about 3,000 students in it. And so we get a lot of educators in picking up holds after school. And then we get a lot of families coming in and browsing too. I think the furthest school, we're within a mile of most of the schools and then 1.5 miles of another school. So we are right where the action is at, which is nice. So that's a little bit about our community and our library.
And it's great information because, I am hoping that we can interview Judy Livingston, who was one of the teachers and, volunteering with us, who helped spread the word. So when you say that there are so many elementary or just some schools around the library, I think that it showed, and that was one of the wonderful things about your initiative, is that you did work so closely with the schools, which is wonderful.
It is. We've been very fortunate to have that connection.
Yeah, I always think when that happens, that's the best. It's really, that's the way it should be. But so how did you first hear or learn about Decodable Books?
It was actually through Judy. So Judy Livingston reached out to me back in October of 2020, I want to say. Actually, I think it was summer of 2020. And just said, hey, have you heard about this Road to Decode program, the Teach My Kid to Read? And would you be interested in seeing if we could partner and do something? And at that point, I was just like, yep, we're on board, because we've always done a lot of stuff to support reading, early literacy development. That's kind of our jam in the library world. We do early literacy-based story times. We do a lot of stuff to support getting children ready to learn how to read. And I think where we not struggled, but where we could really amp up our own services and our own knowledge base was how do we support parents and caregivers and families who are at that stage where they're actually learning how to read. Because a lot of times you think, okay, that's the school, like the school does that, but we still got questions all the time from families. And our early reader section, we've always had early readers in our collection, but we get a lot of questions from parents, depending on what reading level their child uses at their school. Where are the level A books? Where are the level B books? Or they're looking in our early reader section and they go, oh, well, what's a level 3? What's a level 2? And then you have to try to explain that the more popular mainstream publishers who have level 1, level 2, level 3 on their readers, it doesn't necessarily mean that much, and it's not consistent. So anyways, long story short, this is why we were so excited about hearing about this, because this was a need that our community had, and we were so excited to dive into it and start thinking about how we can have more decodable books in our library. And so we started and we said, yep, we're interested. And then COVID happened. So then everything got on a hiatus for a few months, but then we met back up again in the following August. And we first met with Judy. It was Kate, myself, and Judy. And we just learned a little bit more about the program. She encouraged us to sign up for your newsletters and sign up to be an actual partner. And we just started brainstorming ideas, and really it was all hands on deck. I mean, you talked a little bit about how Judy was so essential, and she was. I mean, one, she brought the idea to us, but she was very instrumental in helping us figure out what books to get. She connected me with you, Marion, and I know you sent me tons of ideas for publishers, because these were publishers we weren't used to working with. I know, like it's not in our main vendor that we use. So it was really new for us. So getting just the list of the publishers, so then we were able to reach out to Dog on a Log and get all of her books. We were able to reach out to Whole Phonics, Half Pint Readers, and all of the publishers and authors were amazing too. A lot of them were more than happy to send us free samples. So we got at least a few books complimentary from them. And then of course we bought more sets as well. Trying to think of what else we did. We also really worked with Laura. Was it Laura or Laura?
Laura Brandt. Yeah.
Yeah, Laura Brandt with the school. And she, I believe she's one of your volunteers through Teach My Kid to Read. Yeah. And she was great. She did an amazing thing where the first thing she did was look through our current collection and found any of the books that she thought would be considered decodable. So we took the list that was on your website, but then she also went through and physically looked at every single book in our Wildwood Library and said, this one is decodable, this one isn't. And then if that wasn't enough, she also went through all of them and made a chart where she actually put down the title and the author and then matched it to the specific phonics skills that each of those books support. And so we have that handout ready and available at our Wildwood Library for parents. So it was just amazing. Everything went really smoothly, honestly. It was great.
And everybody was so enthusiastic. And so it was infectious. Yeah.
Very, very.
Well, that's amazing.
So we ordered a bunch of the books. Like I said, we got the Dog on the Log. We got pint-sized readers or half pint readers, whatever it's called. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name. Whole Phonics. We got bounded books, which was glorious for our staff because we would constantly lose the little packets. So that was fabulous. And we ended up getting, right now we have 200 decodable books in our collection right now. And that will be growing because we are expanding our decodable book collections to 2 more libraries next month, actually. So our Forest Lake Library, our Hardwood Creek Library, which is located in Forest Lake, will get a collection, and our main central library in Woodbury called R.H. Stafford will also be getting a collection. So that number will probably triple, and we'll probably have close to 600, if not more.
I'm so, this is so, it really is exciting because, when I was talking to one of our volunteers who was instrumental in setting up her section, and we were talking about how when our kids were younger and struggling, and we were looking for books to help them, and even we would, whether it was the level books or even some of the books that are called phonic books, but they're not decodable, they're more commercial. And I always say, with all due respect to Pinkalicious, that's a hard word. But this volunteer really put it, she really stated it well about for early literacy with some of the level books too. She called them bomb words, that your kids are just starting to learn the sounds and the sound letter connection, but then suddenly there's this word. And the nice thing, about decodables is, depending on the series, they're essentially connected to the phonics skill, and kids can read them. But one of our volunteers also brought up something that I think I put in our last mailing that I never even considered with the libraries, that for older kids that are struggling, we always think of the decodables as, tied to the instruction and the phonics skills, which they are. But for older kids that are struggling, they don't have books that they could read and enjoy. And there are even decodable books like simple words books that I can tell you a bit about if you don't know, after the call. And there are a bunch of books, and I think now she has plays, and they're just on a whole range of topics. I've read a few of them, and they're really engaging. They're age appropriate, but kids can enjoy them. And I never even considered, until I spoke with this very, very smart volunteer, or somebody who's much quicker than me at sometimes seeing things, that there is a gap in kids that are not at the same level as their peers, being able to access books that they enjoy. And because we think of the decodables more as helping with reading, but they also are building, they're also there for these filling a gap for kids that are older and just want to enjoy actually reading. So it's really wonderful, and it's very exciting for for me, for the volunteers, for our organization, to see these programs grow. And I think you talked through the process a bit, but is there anything else, any other specific information about when you were creating these collections? I know it's hard because the distributors might not carry them, or they're not pre-cataloged, as I think I learned about that from you first. But what you had to do to make these books easier to manage in your library.
Yeah. Yeah, finding them was, the first step, just finding out what are decodable books, and reaching out to these vendors. And then we wanted to make sure that families would be able to find them. So we actually ended up adding a local subject heading to the MARC records, the cataloging records, so it's called Road to Decode Collection. And so if we did a keyword search in our catalog, whether it's on the public side catalog or our own staff side, all the books can come up right away. So you can find all the books that we have that are considered to be part of the collection. So that was the first thing that was really important to us. So our cataloger, Christian, was really instrumental in doing that for us. And then we also got stickers to add to the books to make them more easily identifiable, not just for staff, but also for families, so they know where to shelve them, because we have them separated in a specific area at the Wildwood Library, and will be at the other libraries we're adding them to as well. And they actually they're black and white, and they look like roads in the sticker. So those two things were really instrumental. And I think have all the posters and the informational resources that you guys have is really helpful too, because it was a learning curve for us to know what are decodable books, right? And so being able to have the staff knowledge about that, so that then we can have these conversations with parents and families as they come into the library, and we introduce them to these books. I know even for me, and this has been in my career for 20 years now at all things early literacy and reading development, when my kids started kindergarten and were starting to actually learn how to read, it was still kind of a mystery to me, just because, you hear about the different reading levels, but you don't actually know how they're being taught. And then you just get bombarded with sight words, and sight words have their place, they help. But understanding how can we go beyond sight words to help kids actually with the phonics based of it. And it's great that now we have some books that have been tried and tested, and we can recommend them.
And Dawn mentioned the handouts and the resources we have been given. I have printed those and laminated them, and they live in the bin with the decodable books. So the Road to Decode is in there and lives there permanently. That graphic, what are decodable books, how do you use them, are laminated, and they live in that bin. So if anyone happens upon it without talking to library staff, there is kind of explanation for what's going on here. So that's been really good and really helpful to have those tools.
Right, the context, because people do need to know what they are. And, if their kid hasn't been taught, especially with the early literacy, decodables, that's not the purpose. They can't just pick them up cold, that there is a scope and a sequence, and just, again, learning about the different kinds and the fit. So that's great. And how has the reaction been to these books in the community?
Yeah. So it's been really fun. Obviously, Judy Livingston is the one who brought it to our attention, but she has been so excited about what the library has done. I wrote down something that she emailed us, a quotation. She says, "Thank you so much for embracing this initiative, and you have surpassed my expectations." Because originally when she came to us, she was kind of like, yeah, some libraries who partner with it just, bring awareness to it, set out a little display. And Dawn, was it Dakota County that we had talked to in Minnesota who?
Anoka County.
Anoka County. And so we
take that back. I think it was Scott County.
Scott County. I remembered it being more southern. Yeah.
Scott
so there was
County.
A library in Minnesota that, had kind of put out a display. But yeah, Judy was so excited about us building the collection. She's also been super instrumental in getting the word out to educators and families. And so there's definitely people who come into the library specifically looking for that collection. And I can always tell when parent-teacher conferences are, because the uptick of people coming in using the phrase decodable books goes way up. That evening, a lot of the times, our libraries are open till 8. And so like right after conferences, like 7 o'clock, we have 3 families coming in being like, where are the decodable books? So like very exciting that way. And then also just people wandering in, patrons coming in saying, my kid or grandkid is trying to learn how to read, how can I help? And then showing them and explaining, and people have been so excited because, I've talked to parents who've been super frustrated, as Dawn mentioned, by the leveled readers where all the publishers are different. Level 2 means nothing depending on what publisher. And so people, have been really frustrated, and to show the logic behind, some of the decodable systems has been really, really good. There were, when we, debuted the collection at Wildwood, it was a pilot program, kind of like we always knew we wanted to expand it. But there were some librarians who were kind of jealous. And so now that we're expanding it out, that's really, really exciting. It did kind of help tide them over when everyone got the bound Bob books, because the way different library systems use the individual Bob books differently, we had them in the same cases that we use for audiobooks, so like CD sleeves. And so to have everything all together has been amazing. That's been really exciting.
Yes.
And then even though the collection only lives at Wildwood, patrons have been putting it on hold and having them sent to their home locations, especially Dog on a Log. Dog on a Log comes up on the pull list a lot and gets sent out a lot. But then also recently we had someone put the same Half Pint Reader title on hold, 4 copies of the same book, and they wanted all of them. And I was like, sure, go take them. But so it has been moving beyond our community as well. So that's been a lot of fun to see.
Yeah, I mean, our staff is super excited about it. And the other 2 libraries are just like, give us our box. So, yeah.
I'm so glad to hear that, because it really is. I mean, as you know, I think that it changes trajectories, because it provides solutions, and kids that are just, stumbling around are suddenly learning to read, whether it's, supplementing what the schools are doing, or, especially too, even whether it's a parent is homeschooling, or it's, a hybrid. There's such a need. And I think you said it, Kate, it's logic. There's not some craziness to this. It's logic. There's a path, and it's really exciting to see the other libraries starting to respond in the communities, and parents specifically asking. And so what more do you want to, are there additional ideas or ways of growing this to help more families of early and striving readers you want to talk about?
Yeah, I know one idea that Laura was very, very excited about, and we just haven't done because of COVID, was having some more in-person aspect to, having a workshop, come in, learn about Decodable Books. She even said, like, I can just sit, be in the library for a couple hours and tell people about it. And we just, because of COVID, haven't done that. But I would love to in the future have more, in-person gatherings to talk about the collection and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that educational piece for families, just to learn more about, what are Decodable books and how can you help your child learn how to read. We do a lot of the, on our side, we do a lot of the, how can you help your child get ready to learn how to read? But it's that next step that I think is a hole that a lot of families and parents are looking for. Even like I said, for me with my own kids, even though I had been in the business for years, I still was like, well, wait a minute, this doesn't seem right.
Yeah, and that's typical. That is so typical. And, we're going through, we're located in upstate New York, and with our libraries also being mostly closed for programming, it's been nice for us because I'm going to a couple of events in October. We're going to farmers markets with some of the libraries that have set up collections so we can have our material out and provide outreach to parents and families and, talk to them about what the library is, why they're offering these collections and how it can help early and struggling readers and how kids are being taught to read and to just, show some of the visuals. So that's how we're doing, some of the outreach. So we're definitely in the same boat here. And when I talk to Judy, I'll be asking her Judy Livingston, I'll be asking her some of the same questions, even with the school or connecting or just her ideas about outreach now during these uncertain times. And other, there's other experiments that, if experiment sounds so formal, maybe pilot or test, but, we've been looking into literacy corners in ways that when libraries are consistently open, being positive and hoping that does happen sooner rather than later, that we can create spaces for those types of activities and learning that there's a whole slew of resources and books, and we can have have outreach events to provide more training. So it sounds like we're kind of all at the same phase of trying to grow these incredible collections and educate parents and caregivers, guardians, but you've done something that is just, I just think it's amazing when it happens. You have the school connected with this initiative, and that's great. So, both of you, I know I have so much fun working with both of you, and I'm looking forward to continuing on, because we're always making changes to our website and systems, or how we create materials with you. So it's a really great and fun partnership. And so I want to thank you both for sharing all the great work that your library is doing, and for being one of the pioneers in this space. And I'll look forward to hearing more and continuing on. Yeah,
no, and same for you. I mean, I think I can speak for Kate too. Like, I felt so supported through this whole process. Sometimes it's you're creating something and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, and you're just kind of like treading water and figuring it out as you go. But you have been so responsive and so helpful. And like I said, it's been a team thing. This wouldn't have been such a successful launch, pilot, or collection if we didn't have your support and Laura's support and Judy's support. I mean, it was definitely an all hands on deck project.
Well, thank you. That's so nice to hear. And this has just been an amazing interview. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.